today's day 3 and it turned out amazing. The blue coat looks phenomenal. Now the next step is to put down the logos and then of course fill it with a clear epoxy to bring it up to be level on top. Before I can do that, because this is completely hardened, I have to sand this. And in doing so, I'm also going to go ahead and take out all the other rough spots that are on the board. That way when I finally do the clear epoxy, I can get everything its kind of last touch. So with that, I'm going to take this outside and start sanding. So you can see how bumpy the backside of this is, and because this is my first time ever sanding it, I'm going to start here on the back. I'd rather screw up the back, of course, than the front. I'm going to start with 80 grit, and then eventually I have to work my way up to 220. So as you can see, 80 grit is making short work of this, so I'm going to have to be really careful to not cut back too far. But this is less than about a minute of work. Alright, so I have sanded the back with 80 grit. I've definitely gotten it as smooth as I want it to be. I'm now going to step up to 120 and then work my way all the way up to 220. I'm going to keep focusing on the back of this, that way I kind of get my groove and kind of figure out what this board needs before I focus on the front and the sides. Alright, here's the board after 120. Alright, and here's the board after 220. It's getting dark, so I'm going to grab the work lights, and then I'm also going to grab some acetone, wipe this board down, and see how much of the resin is left versus the wood, because potentially I might have sanded down to the wood itself. The layer on the back is going to be thinner since a lot of it dripped off. I'm curious to see how much of the epoxy is actually left. Alright, so here it is after wiping the backside with the acetone. It does look like there is still a thin layer of epoxy all over the board, which is great. Now, it's hard to catch up on camera, but I have noticed that I'm going to have to be careful with 80 grit. In fact, I'm probably not going to use it on the front side at all, because there are a couple areas where I put too much pressure and it made some deep scratches. Other than that, this is definitely as smooth as I need it to be for the backside. I'm going to start working on the sides, probably go ahead and start at the 150 grit, and probably do the same for the few troubled areas on the front side of the board. Alright, so now brought this back inside where it's clean. I brushed this off with air as well as gone over it again with acetone to remove any residue so it doesn't get caught down in with a new layer of epoxy that's going on. So the next step, which is going to be my favorite, is going to be placing the logos on this, because this is the first time I'm really going to see what this is going to look like. So the first things first is I've got to just get the center of this board, and I've got some tape to mark roughly where it is. Of course, this is a 48-inch piece of wood, so 24 inches is going to be my center line. And I'm going to put this carpenter's triangle here so I can get my center. Once I have my center, I'll know where I can put the InWin logo at the bottom, and I can put the engine logo kind of up top, as well as the rough center of the very top of this, where I'm going to put the 3 sponsors, the Aces, T-Force, and EK. So I've got my middle marked, and then now I'm going to get my bottoms marked, which is going to be based from the center. Alright, so it's in between these points that I'm going to be applying the logos. It doesn't really matter which direction I go at this point, I just need to pick and choose where I want to be what I want to be the bottom and what I want to be the top. So I'm thinking I kind of like this one for the front of the case. Yeah, and then right off of this is the top. So I'm going to be looking this way at the case. This is going to be the front, and this is going to curve over and be the top. So everything's going to come upwards on this direction. Alright, so I'm thinking this is going to be the placement of the logos and the size of them. So I had a whole sheet printed of these logos, each with 3 different sizes. Because this is irregular in size, I didn't know exactly what would look best, so I basically got them in widths of 5 inches, 4 inches, and 3 inches respectively. So it looks like I'm going for the 4-inch graphics for the front of this case, and one being down at the bottom, engine logo kind of being maybe a third of the way up to the top, so maybe just a tiny bit down. And at the very top of this case is going to have centered 3 symbols, ROG, EK, and T-Force. I'm trying to keep this as clean looking as possible, but also be able to showcase the possibilities for sponsors to be really integrated into a case mod like this. Check this out. This is the very first look at what the front of the case is going to look like. And then the top of the case is going to be this right here. That looks amazing. Absolutely stunning. I am really excited. So now the next step is to mix up clear epoxy, pour it in, and get these completely set inside of this acrylic. The best part though is that all of these are actually floating because this is translucent. So it's going to have a really great effect once we get the other epoxy on here and then get this whole thing polished up. So we're now ready to mix the final main batch of epoxy. It's just going to be completely clear, and I'm going to pour it right into this basin, get it up to the top level, maybe a little bit over, and then that way once it dries we'll be able to sand it kind of flat, polish it up, and it'll be done.